ANC reaffirming its commitment to the government of national unity, but also calling for the reset button with the DA, aiming, of course, to build wider alliances. With the GNU already on fragile ground, we asked this morning, how will these developments impact public trust? Of course, at the heart of this is concerns or wrangling around the budget and more specifically a proposed increase in value-added tax. Let's make sense of this all with Professor Susan Booysen, who's Professor Emeritus with Wits School of Governance and joins us now via our video link. Prof, it's great to have you with us. As always, thanks very much indeed for making time to speak to us. You know, some time ago, Helen Zille said it's only the ANC and the DA that could break this coalition. And I wonder to what extent you reckon we're there.
We are literally on knife's edge. You know, I think things are going through a very, very tough, as they say in South African political culture, a challenging time. And on both sides, both the ANC and the DA, indisputably the two anchor parties in this government of national unity, as we also saw in terms of the statement of the intent and that clause on sufficient consensus in that agreement. They are the two parties that together constitute about 60% of the statements government of national unity that was created in terms of that. And both of them are going through internally challenging times. We hear so many reports that in the ANC, for example, there are dissenting voices between the sides that back an appeasing approach to the DA and the side that says push, let them get out. And yes, we can refer to those legal grounds for that just now. And on the DA side, we hear reports too that some people are saying, let's give it a go, let's assert our influence inside government. While on the other side, others are saying, now is the time to take a stand and to make sure the DA as opposition party has something to pose to the electorate when it gets to the next election. So both these parties, the anchor parties, indisputably in the GNU, undergoing intense challenges internally that are reflecting and impacting on how it relates to the other party.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder to what extent you reckon opening the exit door is the solution for the ANC here. Because hypothetically speaking, if the party decides to cozy up to the EFF or the MK party, those organizations too will have, let's call it, their own proposals about how to run the government. What I'm getting to is, no matter how you dice it, Luthuli House has to be able to co-govern with someone and have a solution or an agreement that holds.
Yes, indeed. And in the first place, it is highly unusual in a coalition government for parties, or a leading party at that, going out shopping for additional coalition partners. That is internationally, we just do not see that. And that is often a reason for coalitions to go through very turbulent waters when that happens. And now in South Africa, we even just this morning, I've heard reports South Action SA, which so far had been seen as the major candidate for possible cooptation, incorporation into the GNU, for saying no, they are basically not interested to go in that direction. And that would actually be a serious setback for the ANC if that had been a possibility legally to do that. And just by the way, a little footnote in the middle here, the statement of intent does say that if new partners are to be incorporated, there will be consultation with the existing partners. It could very well be that the existing partners, by a majority consent, majority decision in the GNU, could say, yes, let's allow a party like Action SA into it. We know there's so many small parties, depends how votes are taken. We're not used to votes being taken in the coalition, GNU coalition. We haven't heard of anything like that, but it could be that there's enough acrimony, resentment of the DA amongst those micro parties in the GNU that they could vote against the DA if it comes to that, and that they do decide to allow in additional partners. And it seems as if the ANC has been bargaining on that possibility. However, it seems from this morning's statements from Action SA that they are not interested to go that direction. What I've heard in SABC news bulletins is also that they say the GNU already represents over 70%, which it does, of political parties in parliament, and there's much more sense to be in opposition in parliament. And of course, in all of these parties' minds, as we enter this debate as to GNU, how it's constituted, is that it is that budget framework, fiscal framework issue is a very weak one on which to base such future coalition determinations, because it is uncertain whether it is indeed a legally binding decision that was taken in Parliament, and the ANC itself has a very ambiguous decision based on that issue in Parliament, whereas it is approved, the budget framework, fiscal framework is approved. It was approved if it was even legally, technically, legally, procedurally done on a basis that says, yes, but we're looking for alternatives. And the inboxes of everybody seem to be bulging at this stage with proposals on how to get alternatives. Even Musi Maimane, where he chairs Parliament's Appropriations Committee, and just yesterday came out and offered many proposals as to massive savings that would far exceed the amounts that are said to be required in terms of an immediate institution of that. So it's like a very legally contentious issue, and it's practically seems to be challenged as to whether it is necessary to get that money in at all. So this is a very weak base on which ANC seems to be saying, like Vikile Mbalula from yesterday's media briefing seems to be saying, that they will be approaching and resetting the button and negotiating within the next 5 days or so with all other parties. It seems to be a very weak issue on which to continue or to make it contingent, the contingent point for future continuation of the GNU government.
Fascinating that you say that, especially when you listen to, let's call it the commentary from the DA about this over the past couple of weeks. I mean, for that party, it seems this comes down fundamentally to the sharing of power. In fact, they reckon that reducing this to VAT is a bit too simplistic and in fact doesn't go far enough. For them, the principle here is it justifiable for an organization that got 41% of the electoral vote to make 100% of the calls? That's the DA's argument. And I wonder whether you reckon they're stretching it a bit too far.
Now, what I do know, beyond what the DA says, what the ANC says is they've been making a lot about the fact that they are actually implementing the ANC's 2024 election manifesto. They have said it on a number of occasions, made it very clear to their own constituency that this GNU government, coalition government, is following them, is following their policies, and which in effect it has been doing. And I can only imagine that the DA has got a lot of egg on its face when it engages with its own communities and constituencies as to what extent they have been effective in the GNU government in bringing their own policies to bear. And I think that is where the nervousness must be arising from in the DA ranks, or whether they will have anything to show to their electorate to justify the inclusion there. For the ANC, of course, it's so difficult. They are 40% party, the DA is in the early 20s, and how to share power, and that is something that has not been deliberated so far. The details, I think the DA was very overwhelmed when it entered government, and it really got co-opted into existing government policy frameworks, into cabinet operations, a way of doing things in cabinet. And the DA, I think now about 9 months later, is catching its breath and is realizing what did they sign into in practice, and what had become, maybe they didn't sign into this specifically because the statement of intent is rather vague on all of these aspects. There was just 2 weeks that was constitutionally allowed for those deliberations. But I think it's only a wake-up call at this stage, about 9 months in, to the DA as to what are the practical implications of what they have entered into.
Yeah, and tactically, what do you do when you have to account to your constituents in the next, less than 5 years now? Professor Susan Booysen, interesting times, as you said at the beginning of our discussion, and we'll have to wait and see how things unfold from here on. But really appreciate your insights this morning. Professor Booysen, Emeritus Professor, Wits School of Governance. Once again, interesting times indeed.